wipe it up. That's how it works because they do it best. They summarize things, they work through cases, and they really put everything into perspective. It's a nice way of saying that the A team help you put the knowledge you've gained into a practical application and into a way in which you can use it in your daily work as well. So I hope that today is another one that you really enjoy, that you really find enthralling, and that actually you can take back to practice as always. The A team, by the way, are now a permanent fixture on Tubules. And when I say permanent fixture, they will be here every 2 to 3 months, giving us this format of discussing cases, of making sure that you are getting cases. So it'll be brilliant to see that. And I hope you enjoy this evening's live stream as much as you enjoy all the other aspects as well. Welcome to Tubules Live on a Thursday evening, ending your week as usual with inspiration, with positivity, and with enthusiasm. And thank you for all who are waiting and who've been enthusiastically on standby, making sure that you're here to listen to the A team. But before we start that, I always start with a short introduction about Tubules, about why we do what we do, and about what we do for you. It's so important for us. Welcome to Tubules Live, I say, every Monday, every Thursday, and a bonus Tuesday that we had this week with Dr. Raj, A-Team. So there we are. I always start with a thought, and my thought is 2 questions today. 2 questions for you. Question 1, what is success, or what does thriving mean for you? We all have a different definition of success. What is it for you? And the second question I ask is, why do you learn? Why are you here to listen to Tubules Live? Why are you here to get this information? Do you know what? We all have an aim. We all have some needs, some desires, some wishes we're always trying to meet. And those wishes are basically related to what we think is our definition of success, of thriving, of happiness, of fulfillment. We call them goals. And some of us are consciously aware of this, some of us are not, but these goals are always acting in the back of the system. And basically, at the back of our minds, we're always working out how to reach that goal, what plan to make to reach that goal that will help us meet our aims, our needs, our desires, our wishes. That's what we're doing all the time. Why do I say that? Yes, most of us are not aware about these goals. They're operating subconsciously. But we learn because we're trying to get the knowledge and the skill that's going to help us reach those goals, to meet our desires, and to give us that definition of success. So if you know why you're learning today's live stream about aligners and where you're going to apply it and what goal it's going to help you achieve, then that's a really powerful way of doing this, because knowledge is one of 5 things that helps you reach your goal. Obviously, the other 4 other things are there. You need that goal to be well defined. If you want to be focused, get the knowledge, get the skill, have the right environment which has the support and ability to help you make support you in mistake times, and the right community. Tubules is the positive, inspiring community, and if you need positivity and inspiration to reach your goal, then that's Tubules for you. That's growth, and when you have growth in your system, you improve and develop day by day, and what happens? It increases your chance of thriving, of achieving success, of achieving your goals, or whatever you call that. So that's what you want to do at the time. And when you're inspired, when that's how Dental Tubules helps through those 3 steps to give you these 5 items of growth. Yes, we have the IPDP. We have over 2,000 online courses. We have the skills and hands-on courses. We have an environment with nearly 400 practices that work with us, and a community of 46,387 tubulites as of last Sunday. That's how big Dental Tubules now spans through 68 countries around the world. The community needed in dentistry to positively inspire and energize people. Get the 3 steps in. You will find, if you find your inspiring goals, it'll inspire you. It'll give you the why of what, the reason to do these things. That's when you'll really put your foot on the pedal to grow, to achieve those goals. So that's why we say grow, and that's when you reach your success. That's why at Tubules we talk about inspire, grow, thrive. And when you inspire yourself, that's when you lead your teams and your, everybody else through that inspiration. I always ask these three questions, but I'm not going to ask them today because most of the time your answer is yes, or it's an emphatic yes, like this little man here. But the important thing to remember is inspiring yourself, grow, thrive together. Don't do it alone, do it with a community. And that's what Dental Tubules is here to do, to help you get to your goals and do more than just CPD. Yes, we give you CPD, we give you ERMR, we give you education, courses, IPDP, but beyond all that, more than just CPD and education, we want to inspire you and your team. We want to inspire your team to enable everybody to grow, to become their best selves so that you can really maximize your potential to thrive. That's why we're an organization of over 45,000 tubulites doing this day by day for each other, with each other, by each other. And ultimately, we will help you find those goals. We will help you grow using the 5 pillars of tubules that I mentioned earlier. And your practices, if you're not on our practice membership, we can include that as well and help you through that. And it's not just professional growth. You've got to have personal growth. Personal skills are as important as professional skills. And when I say financial growth, I mean sustainability. You need that knowledge to be sustainable. So we try and give you the knowledge, skills in all of these areas, because CPD as continuing professional development may be what others do. But at Dental Tubules, we do CPD as you, the complete person development. If we can help you grow professionally and personally and become the leaders, the educators, the people in dentistry who serve our patients well, then that is what we stand for. And dental students, undergraduate students worldwide get free premium membership on Dental Tubules. We've had an amazing lineup in January, all focused on personal development. February has been brilliant, talking about ownership, talking about extraction principles and orthodontics. And February isn't over. There's Prosthodontic Week next week. But today is all about an amazing panel who have been here before. And if you like what we do at Tubules, if you're truly tubulized, then all I say is spread the word. Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Signal, Telegram, email, sharing with your friends, whoever, spread the love. Tubulitis, everyone needs to be infected with that. That's how we'll go. Yes, we have all these videos. Yes, we have 50 plus study clubs in the UK alone. So it's your job to decide. You can remain a sheep on an isolated farm, or you can join the tribe of tubules tigers, making a positive, inspiring difference in dentistry. It's your choice. And not just dentistry. We believe in making a positive difference around the world. That is why, still now, 3% of gross from Dental Tubules income, your subscription 3%, goes to the Tubules Foundation, where we help children like this around the world who don't have opportunities for education by building top quality educational facilities for them. This is our first project in Voi. This is where the school started nearly 2 years ago. Last October, it was here with the 3% money. And a few weeks ago, the building is ready and the inside is getting ready. Very soon, you will see the furniture in there. We're going to get all tubulites to start collecting the books and the information and everything else we need to get an education for these students. So while you're doing your learning and inspiring yourself, be aware that our project is also helping somebody else. So that's what you're contributing towards. And on that note of inspiration and positivity, welcome to today's event. I am always honored, excited, and brilliantly so good to see the A team, the Aligner team coming in, led by Dr. Farouk Ahmed, who's a consultant at Guy's Hospital, Dr. Martina Hodson at the Dental Studio, and Angela Olak play the red corner of the tech team, doing the first case, and Dr. Mandip Gossel and Hisham Ali, the blue corner, doing the other case today. You're going to have fun watching the cases today and learning things. Ask questions in the box below. Type in. If you can hear me, type yes on the box below. Just a quick one. CPD is available to premium and practice members, but not the base members. Base members, you can watch, enjoy the live stream. Now, if you're watching the video today, under the video box is the chat where you're putting your questions and everything else. Under there, not yet, at the end of live stream, you will see the questions appear. Make sure that you answer all CPD multiple choice questions, and when you've finished answering them, click on submit questionnaire. But don't stop there. Click on yes and continue, because you need to type in your reflections of this activity. Type the reflections in, click next. tick the IPDP goal that this matches so that the CPD is attached onto your PDP. Then click next, tick the GDC high level outcome. Today's is C. And then fill in the feedback questions, all of them. If you don't do all of these steps, the system does not generate a GDC compliance enhanced CPD certificate. So you must follow them all. And when you do it, you will get confirmation with a green box that says CPD is added to your account. You can then go to the IPDP, you can click on IPDP quick links, you can download the CPD certificates, store them, print them, or keep them on our website, whatever you prefer. As for the base members, enjoy the live stream today. Instead of the CPD questions that are at the bottom of the page, you will see an upgrade button if you want to upgrade and explore everything that Dentale Tubules has to offer to help you. Click on upgrade. Students, free membership. Nurses, hygienists, therapists, technicians, you can click on apply now and get a special rate. For dentists, the membership is £250 a year or per quarter. We've done a quarterly membership, is £70. You can also join as a practice for this as well. And remember, although we ask you for your card details, you get a 14-day free trial. If you've never used Tubules before, we don't charge you straight away. We give you 14 days to test run the website. And if you like it, it'll charge you. If you don't, you can cancel any point. But the chances are you will be tubulized, you will be energized. Once you enter the Tubules ecosystem, most people stick along. That's what we stand for. And that's our introduction today. I'd like to welcome our host for this evening, Dr. Farooq Ahmed. Farooq, can you hear me okay? And can we hear you? Welcome this evening again.
Thank you, Drew, so much for the invite. And it's great to see the team have come together to provide another fantastic evening.
And it looks like this is a fixture now. We're going to be here every few months. What's the A-team line? I love it when a plan comes together. And I think these plans are coming together really well.
You know, Drew is the most inspirational man in dentistry. I said that last time, and this time I'm saying it again, and it's always genuine each time I say it. You know, Drew, after Drew introduces anybody, I just feel like roaring and taking on the world and saying, I've got all the power. But yeah, Drew's been our inspiration in the main to encourage us to come and come together for this. And I'm going to be your host, so I'm going to give a brief introduction, and then we'll get started with the
Excellent. Have a great evening, everybody. I am off, and over to you, Farooq.
Cheers, Drew.
Great. So I am your host this evening. I'm Farooq Ahmed. I'm one of the orthodontic consultants over at Guy's Hospital down in London. And I lead on teaching aligners in the hospital. I also work in private practice in the West End and North London. I host a podcast which is related to orthodontic education, which is at www.orthoinsummary.com. And it's really just 5-minute short podcasts about orthodontics, how it works. We've got over 15 podcasts now dedicated to aligners. This is a second in our series of sharing our experiences and knowledge of aligners from a range of experts from different backgrounds. We have the usual suspects who've gathered together, and not only people who are experienced in using aligners, but also people experiencing delivering education, as they've all contributed to Tubules Live over the past months. We're going to go a bit further today than what we've done previously, and we're going to give you guys a really dynamic session. We're going to take 2 aligner cases, and not only are we going to describe to you the changes we make to the cases, we're going to show you this time as well in a live dynamic fashion. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm just going to share my screen here and just go through what we're building ourselves towards for our future sessions. So hopefully you guys can see that screen. Excellent. So what we want to do is get you guys to send us your cases so we can look at them as an expert panel and give you information about those cases. And this is how I want cases to be sent through to us. We've got our next session, which is happening in a couple of months' time. Pen it down in your diary, guys. We'll be back and we'll be giving you the information. To share your cases with us, we need 2 things. We need the photos, we need the online setup. And I'm just going to quickly go through those. We did a standard set of orthodontic photos taken using mirrors for the occlusal photos and cheek retractors for the anterior shots. Now, sending us your case through the online setup has got a few buttons to click, and I'm just going to run through it. So for Invisalign, we need to open up the ClinCheck feature here. So rather than opening up ClinCheck Online 6.0, we need to open up the desktop version. Once we've got it open, we need to go to Tools. And once we've got Tools open, we'll go to Export, and exporting as a sample case. That will give you guys a file. Email that with the photos through to Dentinal Tubules for the aligner panel. We'll have your case to then be able to discuss, and it will be anonymized as well. Now moving on to the introduction for our first panelists. So we've got Angela and we've got Martina. So starting off with Angela Olek. She's a specialist orthodontist and director of dental rooms in Wimbledon. Angela is Angela has worked with a keen interest in aligners and now treats the majority of her cases with aligners, using auxiliaries such as TADs and using other components as well. Martina Hodgson is a general dental practitioner. She's a Platinum Elite provider of Invisalign and is in Wakefield in Yorkshire. She's completed a diploma in aligners and was a co-founder of Inspire Women in Dentistry. So I'll hand over to you two guys to lead on the first case.
Thank you, Farouk. So I think the first thing to say is thank you, Drew, for an amazing orthodontic week. It's been exhilarating so far. We all really thoroughly enjoyed watching Damon and the Tahari brothers. They were fantastic. Ramtin was great, and they showed us some great cases. And then, oh my goodness, the roller coaster adventure that Raj gave us on Tuesday. It's been fantastic. So, there's been some hard acts to follow, but Drew, thank you for dedicating this week to orthodontics. And somebody needs to thank Farouk for organizing the Rowdy A team. Thank you, Farouk. You've been brilliant at getting us going, getting us organized, getting the cases. I hope we do you proud today.
Thank you. And turning up on
Martina is going to share her screen with us. Martina,
I'm in charge of PowerPoints and ClinChecks tonight. So let's hope there's not any technical issues. I will do my best.
I have to say, everybody, whilst we're getting the screen up, that I don't think, I listen to a lot of lectures and go to a lot of conferences and talks, always learning, that's my thing. But I don't think I've ever watched anybody do ClinCheck modifications live. So Martina's going to be doing that for the first time ever. So, you guys are really in for a treat this evening. And Martina.
Well, you might be in for a laugh because the dress rehearsal.
A glass of wine afterwards. So, guys, we'd like to introduce to you case number 1. We are going to have a real quick whistle-stop tour of the case. We're going to sort of show you what the problems of this case are. We will give you what the treatment goals are, and we will talk about what the different options are. We're going to do that really quite quickly this time, not as much detail as last time, because this time the third point on this list is the ClinCheck considerations. And at that point, that's when we're going to share with you the ClinCheck and actually make some live modifications to it for you, and give you an idea of how we would be manipulating these ClinChecks in a real life case. Then the 4-sentence prescription. I think this is something really useful for all of us to follow, to be able to really pin down how to communicate with the technicians, whichever aligner system you're using, and then we'll all come together and discuss the case. So these are the extraoral photos of our first patient. We've got the views here, and these are the kind of views we'd like when you're submitting a case that Farouk was discussing. So a lateral view you can see here. I won't go into too much detail because we're going to create a problem list, but this is a patient who's essentially has a mild class 2 skeletal pattern with no asymmetries and a slightly high smile line. The intraoral photos look like this. So we're just going to give you a chance to have a quick look, and then we'll start to put together a problem list. Okay, so extraorally, we can see that this patient has a very mild class 2 skeletal pattern. The lower face height is a little bit difficult to tell with some of the face blocked out, but it's a slightly reduced lower face height. And when the patient smiles, it's really important that we always assess, you know, we're not just assessing the static occlusion, we're looking at how these teeth look in the face with the smile. And in this case, we would point out on our problem list that the smile line's slightly high. We've got quite a fair amount of gingival show in the upper 2 to 2 region. The smile arc is also non-consonant, so if you look at her lower lip line, it's slightly flattened, but the curvature of her smile line is quite you know, it's quite curvy. It doesn't really match. And actually, what we're sort of moving towards is thinking about moving those upper incisors. But we'll talk about that in a little more detail in a moment. Intraorally, the patient has a class 2 division 1 incisor pattern with mildly crowded upper and lower arches. And I think a really important point to note here is that the labial biotype, even without probing these or without a perioprobe, you can see that it's quite thin, almost sort of translucent in the lower incisor region. So it's a thin labial biotype. Okay, so also, a little bit more detail when we're looking intraorally, we have a tendency to class 2 buccal segments. If you have a look at the canine relationship here, it's tending towards a quarter unit class 2, maybe even a little bit more on the left-hand side. The patient has a slightly increased overjet. It's measuring at 3.6 millimeters. This is one of the great things about a ClinCheck. You know, you can, all these parameters, things like overjet and overbite, are actually provided to you once you have your first ClinCheck back. And you know, we can't ever measure intraorally during a clinical examination to that degree of accuracy. So it's quite nice to have that. So on the ClinCheck, the initial overjet came back as 3.6 millimeters, and the overbites increased at 80%. So our treatment goals. The patient's main complaint was that she was concerned about the crossing over of the upper incisors, and she was not happy with the appearance of that particular aspect of her malocclusion. So we needed to relieve the crowding and align these teeth. We need to level the arches, and we need to reduce the overbite. And for functional purposes, really, an overbite of around 30% is a good amount. We'd like to correct the molar relationship so that everything fits together really nicely, and we'd like to reduce the overjet to about 2 to 3 millimeters. Aesthetically, that always looks nice. And if we aim to finish to a class 1 and class 1 incisor and molar pattern, then everything will fit nicely, and the patient will end up with hopefully a very nice aesthetic result, which addresses her concerns. So, treatment options, always remember, you know, this is a treatment that is for really addressing the patient's aesthetic concerns. So it can be left, it doesn't have to be treated, and always remember to give the patient that option. We could also, of course, treat the upper arch only and address the patient's one concern, but for purposes of sort of really digging into this case today, we've decided that we're really going to talk about a more complete case, and we're going to demonstrate to you the treatment of the upper and lower arches. So the two ways that this could really go is that we could treat the upper and lower arch and align the teeth only with or without IPR, or we could treat upper and lower arches, full treatment, with IPR and with molar relationship correction. So the ClinCheck that we're about to sort of delve into was set up with this prescription. So the prescribing clinician has asked for these certain aspects. They've asked for the case to be finished to 2 millimeter overjet and overbite with no IPR, no change to molar relationship. So this is going more towards the alignment only. but with some overbite reduction through proclination of the lower incisors. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we're looking at the ClinCheck, about how we can reduce the overbite. They've asked for some bite ramps and asked for conventional attachments. So in this prescription, we have set up, so the ClinCheck has been set up with this prescription. Martina and I had a really good look at it, and neither of us would treat it this way. And this is for a number of reasons. So we're going to just dive into the ClinCheck and actually start to show you why we wouldn't do why we wouldn't treat the case like this, why we wouldn't not have any IPR, why we would reduce the overbite, and all of those different things. So I think we should get into the exciting bit. So Martina, over to you. Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks, Angela. So, you know, we've submitted that prescription, all right? And this is the ClinCheck that's come back. And I want to just start by just sort of sharing with you what I've learned from Andy Toy, actually, about the way that it's advised to kind of approach your ClinChecks. Okay, so it's really good to get in the habit of being systematic about looking at your ClinChecks and the way they're set up. So the first thing that we need to do when we get our ClinCheck back is we need to check that the bite has been set up properly. So if you click on your photographs, you can go through and you can check, are you happy that they've set the occlusion up correctly compared to your photographs? Now, obviously, that's assuming that you've taken your photographs properly as well, making sure that the teeth are properly in occlusion. The second thing to do when you are checking your ClinChecks is to go to the comments. Okay, so here we can see the doctor's comments at the bottom, and we can see the technician's comments at the top. So always make sure you read through the technician's comments, just so if there's any particular things that you need to pick up on there. Finally, you need to check the final position of your teeth. We actually had it there. I always do that when I do my ClinCheck reviews.
I wanted to say, but I didn't.
I knew there was something you wanted to say. I do my ClinCheck reviews via Zoom, and because I always check them before I go online with the patient, I leave them in the final position. It's such a spoiler. Anyway, here's the spoiler. That's our end result. Okay, so we need to look at our end result, which we'll come to in a minute, and just take a look if we're happy with the actual final position of the teeth. The fourth thing that we need to do is to play our ClinCheck, okay, because we need to check we're happy with the way that we've actually got to our final result. So I'm going to play the ClinCheck now. You can see that deep bite reducing. We can see that we're getting some proclination of the lower incisors, as was requested in the ClinCheck. We can see there's no IPR. Okay, so there's quite a few things that we want to address here. We need to check for things like round tripping. We want to check if we're happy with our attachments. We want to check if we're happy with the IPR. And also I like to check the staging of the IPR as well, especially in the current pandemic. If we're going to do any AGPs with our IPR, I try to get it all done at the same time, so we're not doing multiple AGPs on the same patient. Finally, your fifth point is to obviously, as I mentioned, consent the patient. So you're going to go through that ClinCheck when you're happy with it with your patient and go through all your consent points, and try not to do a spoiler at the beginning of your Zoom call. All right. So the first thing that me and Angela was part of our treatment aims, okay, was to relieve the crowding. So in the prescription here, we've got no IPR, and it's the crowding has been asked to be relieved just using expansion. But if you cast your mind back to when we were going through the problem list, you'll remember that we actually had quite a thin biotype. So this is really important to take this into account when we're planning our ClinChecks, because we really want to be careful with the amount of expansion and proclination that's going on. So when you actually look at this ClinCheck, you can see if I actually go to the end result here and then superimpose the beginning position of the lower incisors, we can see there is a fair amount of proclination going on here as well. And we've also got some buccal expansion, obviously not too much. So I'm not too concerned about the buccal expansion here, but the proclination does actually concern me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my ClinCheck. This is the bit.
Martina, shall we put the photos up so we can demonstrate the labial mucosa? That's it.
So just to remind you here, I don't know if you can see, I've got all your lovely faces in the way of mine. Especially when you look at those lower anteriors, you can really see how thin the gingiva is in that area. So we really need to be protecting that area. So the first thing we're going to do is we're not going to be relying so much on the proclination. We're actually going to introduce some IPR. The other reason I want to introduce the IPR as well is actually if we look at the final overjet on this ClinCheck, it's pretty tight. So I personally like to have a little bit more overjet at the end of my ClinChecks, whether it be for composite bonding or fixed retainers, and just to give them a little bit more room in their function. So we'll go back to our modification. So now we're going to do the live modification. This is where it all goes wrong. And what we're going to do is I want to add IPR in between the lower anterior teeth, okay? So what I'm going to start doing is actually clicking on here, and I've just added some spacing. I told you it was all going to go horribly wrong.
So whilst
I'm going to add IPR between these teeth here, and what you're doing is you just click on add IPR, and you can actually see that we're adding 0.2 millimeters between all of the lower anterior teeth. You can then gradually see them start to tuck in, and that means that we are actually able to reduce the amount of proclination that we need to achieve our alignment, and it's also going to have effect on our final overjet. So when I now have a look at our final overjet here, you can actually see that when we compare that to our original ClinCheck here, you can see we've just got that little bit more freedom in our overjet there as well. And we've also managed to reduce the amount of proclination on the lower anteriors. Okay, so the next thing that I want to look at on my ClinCheck is the alignment of the teeth. Now, when I look at my ClinCheck, I can see here, especially here on these lower molars, we've got some blue dots, okay? These blue dots are here because for several reasons, I'll come to some of them in a moment, but particularly this blue dot here, it's there because it's a rotation, it's not got an attachment on it. And I don't really want to move my sevens, okay? There's a few reasons I don't want to move my sevens. On this particular case, they're not particularly, you know, badly placed. But if you did have you know, a case where derotating the sevens, moving the sevens was going to really add time and complications to your ClinCheck, it's good to just have a look and see, actually, is it necessary to move those sevens? The second reason I don't want to move my sevens in this case is because it's going to give us some really good anchorage if we keep them still. Okay, because what it means is when we want to try and reduce our deep bite, we need some anchorage posteriorly. And if the aligners are busy doing other stuff with heavy back molars, it's going to just reduce the amount of anchorage we've got. So I'm actually going to click on these molars here. I'm going to go back to my modification, and I'm going to right click on here and make it unmovable. And I'm going to make this one unmovable as well. My upper sevens aren't particularly moving. We've only got half of them on the ClinCheck anyway, and they're actually not moving if you just take my word for it in the ClinCheck. Okay, so we've made our sevens unmovable. The next thing we notice when we look at this ClinCheck is we've got these blue dots on our sixes, okay? And when you hover over that blue dot, it means it's a less predictable tooth movement, okay? The reason these teeth have got blue dots on is because there's no attachments on them. Now, when I look at this upper right six in particular, when we look at it from the buccal view, we can see it's not quite class 1, it's just slightly tipping towards a quarter unit class 2. What we're going to get by actually derotating this upper right molar is, if you have a look and imagine it derotating, it's actually going to give us a little cheeky class 1 correction, but actually it's going to give us a little bit more space as well. So when you look at it actually derotating, you can see it's actually creating a little bit more space as well, which is fantastic because it reduces our need for IPR. But what problem we've got here is that we've got no attachments on these first molars, and that is actually why these blue dots are on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some rectangular attachments on my molars, and that's going to help with our anchorage, but it's also going to help with the derotation of these teeth. This is going so much better than it went yesterday, Angela.
You're doing really well. It's that
It'll
glass
be
of
all
wine
right
you've
on
just
the
had.
night.
Yeah.
So that is me done. Angela's got some points she'd like to change on this ClinCheck as well, so I'm going to hand over to you.
Okay. So the first thing that we need to discuss is the overbite reduction. In this case, the overbite has been reduced by proclining the lower incisors. So if we just have a sort of quick general talk about how the overbite is reduced with Invisalign cases, or sort of really just in any general case, we have some options when we're looking at overbite reduction. You can just intrude the lower incisors, or you can procline the lower incisors. By proclining them, you will also get some overbite reduction. You could just do the overbite reduction by leveling the curve of spee. So sometimes we end up with an increased overbite because we have an increased curve of spee. We don't really have that in this case, but if there was, then another option is to intrude the lower incisors but extrude the premolars, and that's called relative intrusion. So you're getting a little bit of intrusion of the anterior segments and then a little bit of extrusion of the posterior segments, and that will level your curve of spee and give the overall effect of an overbite reduction. The third way that you could get some opening of the bite and controlling of your vertical dimension is to not only intrude the lower incisors, but also intrude the upper incisors, and that will open up your bite. And in this case, that's really what we want. We don't have an increased or a very exaggerated curve of spee. So what we want to do is intrude the lower incisors. We don't really need extrusion of the premolars. And we want to intrude the upper incisors somewhat because we want to just lift up that gingival line, and so that it's a little bit more in harmony with the smile line for this patient. So that's what we're aiming for. Now, Invisalign in general is pretty good at giving overbite reduction. It's getting better and better, but still one needs to really sort of educate themselves as to what features of Invisalign you can use to really help with reducing that overbite. And I think probably at this point, I will tell you about the features in a moment. So if we just have a look, I think Martina's already demonstrated to us that we've got, we don't really have an increased curve of spee, but what has happened in this case is that the lower incisors have been proclined. So Martina, can you please just correct the crown tip of those teeth so that they don't look so proclined?
Yeah, so what we can do when you're on your ClinCheck, if you press Control and Alt, you can actually select a group of teeth at the same time. So I'm actually going to select, it's just delaying, hang on.
So whilst
Because I'm on the wrong one, that's why.
Oh, that's okay. Martina, whilst you're having a go at that, I'll just describe what we're seeing has happened is that we've just been, the lower incisors has just been proclined. We've now taken away that proclination with the IPR, and now we're going to just correct the crown, correct the crown tip so they're not so proclined. And we're going
So
to
I've done that. So
We've
you see, this is
done
what
that
I've done
all?
here. This is the crown tip. All I've
Good.
done is pressed it twice, and we've actually brought them just ever so slightly lingually, and just reduced that crown tip on them now. So that's done. Took 2 seconds.
Okay, brilliant. So also bear in mind that, you know, now if we want true intrusion of these lower incisors, that we really do need some space for that. So again, you know, where we've got 0.2 IPR, when you send this back to the clinician and let them know that now you want to intrude the lower incisors, they might actually program in a little bit more IPR to show us, to give us the space for those teeth to come down. Martina, can we also show the upper arch and show how they're actually in the original ClinCheck, the upper incisors have already been intruded, so we can see that. So can we just come to an anterior view and the superimposition? Brilliant. So that's a good amount of intrusion of the upper incisors. It's already been done in that first version of the ClinCheck, so we don't need to do any more. But when you get to this stage, you can have a really good look and see how much overbite reduction you've got. There are some other features that you can use with Invisalign for overbite reduction, and I think it's really sort of a good point to discuss those. So the first one is the use of precision bite ramps, and what those are plastic protrusions on the palatal surfaces of the upper 2 to 2. They are called precision bite ramps because the location of them changes with each aligner. It's really quite clever how it happens, so that you have an even contact of the lower incisors along the whole of that platform. And what happens is that allows even more forces to be directed along the long axis of the lower incisors to help with the intrusion. So that's one of the features, and we've already added those precision bite ramps. They were asked for in the first original prescription. So it's always really good to try to use those. You need to have at least 1.5 millimeters overjet to be able to add those, but they're there. And that's one of the really one of the newer features in helping with the overbite reduction. And then I would say also now, I always add posterior attachments to help with vertical anchorage. So when you are using an aligner to intrude the lower incisors, you've got a downward force on the aligner at the front. And what can sometimes tend to happen is that you can get lifting of the incisor posteriorly. So Martina's going to add for us some attachments, and now you can see all posterior teeth have got attachments added. That just really helps to direct all the forces anteriorly with really good grip of the aligner posteriorly, and you're going to get some really good intrusion of your lower incisors. Now, at this point, I think I'd like to just introduce to you all the new features of the Invisalign system, which is the new G8. And one of the features is that it's really now got some added benefits to it to help to increase the efficiency of the overbite reduction. And one of those is called Smart Force Aligner Activation. Okay, so when you have Smart Force Aligner activation, what is happening is that the inside of the aligner is now being modified in shape to apply pressure to different areas of each different tooth in a certain way to give you more efficient tooth movement, more control of the tooth movement. And actually, they're now saying that overbite reduction is about 2 times more efficient than it was previously. So, you know, I've just really begun to fit some of these aligners with the new G8 features. So I look forward to sort of sharing some of those cases with you. Okay, last thing that I want to talk about is we have now given ourselves an overjet here by basically adding IPR to the lower arch, because we didn't want to procline them. And so now you can actually see that that class 2 pattern has become apparent. And so we want to correct that. And in this case, where you've got very mild class 2 pattern with a very small amount of overjet that you want to reduce, I would add some class 2 elastic. So Martina's going to show us how to add the cutouts and the hooks for that. We are placing a hook on the upper canines, and then we are placing button cutouts. So that means that a composite button has to be added to the lower molars. I think, you know, there is a lot of thought that goes into whether you should use a hook or a button on the canine, on the 6, and where these things should go. And it really depends on the malocclusions, but to keep it simple for today, it's a hook on the upper canine and a button cutout on the lower molar. And when you ask the patient to wear class 2 elastic, they'll start to get some very mild dentoalveolar changes, which will give us a little bit of reduction in that overjet and correct that mild class 2 pattern into a class 1 buccal relationship. So at this point, we would now send all these modifications back off to the technician, and they would then finish that off for you and send it back to you with that class 2 simulation as well. So that's how we would treat the case.
Fantastic. Right. So what I want to just whiz through, because I'm aware that we are taking up everybody's time, is the 4-sentence treatment plan. And this is what we would submit with our original ClinCheck to actually give us more of the kind of ClinCheck that we want at the end of treatment. When we run through our 4-sentence treatment plan, the first thing that we're going to do is explain to the technician what our patient's presenting complaint is, which in this case is the patient didn't like their crossed over central incisors. The second point that we need to convey is to give the technician an upper anterior central incisor as a reference point to align the other teeth. So I have a look at these photographs and I think that I would like to procline my upper right one by 1 millimeter and use that as a reference to align the other teeth. The third point that we need to convey is our upper posterior expansion reference point. Okay, so there's 2 ways that you can communicate that to your technician. The first way is to use a molar as a reference tooth, and the second way is to explain it in millimeters. I'm not that clever, so I prefer just to use a molar as my reference, and for this case I really like the position of the 7s. I'm going to use them as my reference point to expand my arches. If you're a Go provider, you could use a 6. Then I want to tell my technician how I want my overjet and overbite to be finished. So I'm going to explain my overjet and overbite, or I could give a lower anterior reference point as well. For this case, we wanted a 2 to 3 millimeter overjet and a 30% overbite. And it's that easy. And when you get in the hang of doing your 4-sentence treatment plans, you can literally bang them out in 1 minute, and it just really gets you back a ClinCheck that's much more acceptable. So there we are, guys. I hope you found that helpful. So we would love to open it up to our colleagues on the panel and see what they thought about it and if they've got any questions on this case. If you haven't fallen asleep.
They're still awake.
They're still awake.
They're still awake. And looking really dapper as well. Come on, 18.
That was awesome.
That was great. Thanks for that, guys. I think I have a question, really, and it relates to one of the main features of the malocclusion and the introduction of the G8 features, which I haven't really used yet. But have you found that, in your clinical experience, have you found that there has been a difference in the rate or efficiency of overbite reduction?
I think it's too early, isn't it?
It's too early.
It's just been released, so
yeah.
I mean, it's literally been a couple of weeks that it's been out. So it will only be on ClinChecks that you've submitted in the last few weeks. So we've yet to find out. I mean, we were used to using these little tricks like putting, rectangular attachments on our posterior teeth, and it's supposed to kind of negate the need for that. Whether, I mean, have you noticed, Andrew, if they're still using the deep bite attachments on teeth?
So now it's going to be more, you will always see attachments on the lower premolars, but depending on the severity of the overbite, they may not put attachments any further back because they feel there's probably not going to be a need for it. I fitted a case today, and the patient commented they didn't know that these features were coming, and they commented that the plastic felt less bulky. It also looks more translucent. You don't see those lines of the layering of the plastic. So definitely there are some changes, but the biggest change that we won't be able to see is this SmartTrack.
The activation, it's the
yes, aligner activation.
They call it all fancy names, don't they? But
SmartTrack aligner activation, right?
Yeah.
And so basically what they're saying is that now, instead of using this sort of it's not just an aligner that's a different shape to the patient's mouth and you put it in and the teeth are going to take the shape. It's the inside of the aligner, the fit surface is going to have pressure points on it in different areas so that the teeth are activated and being pushed from different sites from within. And we've yet to see, but I'm really hopeful. At least they're thinking about the fact that overbite reduction is tough, and they're doing everything from their end to make it a little bit better in terms of the features of the aligner for us.
Yeah, I think the other thing is it's, obviously we like to do some overcorrection on our anterior teeth. Sometimes it's a really good trick to help achieve the overbite that we want, because we know that it's really tricky. We know that actually when you look at the ClinCheck, you will only get about 40% of that overbite reduction. So it's how far do we trust the GA, and how far are we going to let it try and do our job for us that we've been doing. So it'll be interesting to see how people get on with it.
I think we won't need to do so much overcorrection.
Yeah, I think so.
I think watch this space. Let's see. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think I'll be happy with it. I think I'm always slightly cynical of certain innovation because we know, of course, that it has always been the fit surface which affects the way in which teeth move, and we've manipulated that ourselves using a liner, a modification, or putting a dimple in an aligner, or modifying it in some way. So I think it'll be interesting if someone can do some study on comparing different aligners to see if actually there is a huge difference between different aligner companies. Because I don't know, of course, Goss, that you have interest in this, but I think that sometimes, particularly with Align, because of course this is a conversation about aligners rather than just Invisalign.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes
with Align, it might be that there is a reason that they might bring out a new technology or a new phase of their work or their workflow in order to ensure that that new dentists or people who are not using aligners at the moment are sort of enticed by a new technology, if it's G7 or G8 or whatever else. So I think there's a certain element of perhaps innovation, but also a certain element of marketing from dental companies and laboratories, which we have to be aware of.
Yeah.
In my opinion, this is innovation. Like, they have understood the problems that we're having, with expanding the upper arches and getting tipping rather than buccal movement, and then the difficulties with overbite reduction, and they're trying to address it. I'm not saying they've done they've been successful, because we don't know yet,
Sure.
but they know what the problems and the limitations of the system is, and they're trying to address it. So innovation.
But wasn't that what G5 was supposed to do? G5 was the deep bite correction.
That's when the precision ramps came.
3 generations later, and the claims made about G5 are now similar to G8. They said they had it sussed, and now 3 generations later, they're like, "Oh, guys, we didn't have it sussed. Here we go, we got it sussed." So, I mean, I don't want this to turn into a parish council meeting on Zoom.
Too late.
He's the controller.
You know, yeah, I'd be Janet Weaver if that was the case. But yeah, so you have to be a bit cynical. I think it's a needed innovation. I think, you know, we all know AlignTech, you know, are great at innovating stuff, and the product can only get better and better and better. But I also agree with Hesham that, you know, why make those claims until, you know, we see the results? And it is a little bit of enticing and marketing, saying, hey, look, we can do this, we can do that. So yeah, so we'll see.
We'll watch this.
Yeah,
space.
let's watch this space.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Angela and Martina, for that case. Can I ask for you, Martina, for you to stop sharing the
Yes,
screen, if that's
I
possible?
will.
Fantastic. And I shall now share the screen, and we shall move on to the blue team. Excellent. So guys, we'll take questions for case 1 and for case 2 together at the end. So please populate them into the chat box, and we'll go through those as long as the panel are happy to give it the rest of their evening, which they usually are. And if not, I will entice them to do so with a new product. So I'm going to introduce Mandeep Gossal, or Howling Mandeep Gossal. That's the second time I've said that. I will carry on saying it until it catches on. He's a specialist orthodontist based in Loughborough. In the Midlands. He won the prestigious J.K. Williams Gold Medal from the Royal College of England in 2013 for his M.Orth. He teaches his diploma in orthodontics, which is the Ortho course. Please do look at that. It's a fantastic resource and online availability. It's a great product to look at. He's also the co-founder of Purple Aligners. And we've also got Hisham Ali. And Hisham Ali is a consultant orthodontist based in Bolton in the Northwest. And he also works in private practice in Manchester at Northington House. His focus is on education and transfer of skills. And to that note, Hisham is also going to be doing a course that will be running on the 11th of March. Here is contact details, and you guys can contact him in getting this information in a very succinct and clear way from his course. I'm going to hand over to Hisham now. I believe he's going to do assessment and diagnosis, and then Gossel's going to carry out the dynamic component to this and go through the clean check.
Thanks for that, Farouk. And you know, just to echo what Angela said earlier on, and Martina, of course, you know, thanks to Drew for letting us come back a second time, despite how rowdy we are, as far as orthodontists go, and to Farouk for organising the cases and making sure that we are all sort of kept in line, which I know isn't an easy job. So thanks for Farouk.
My pleasure.
When I actually saw this case, I was quite happy because I think this, for me, is an area where aligners, irrespective of which brand you use, I think where aligners can really shine, and where I think that actually they might just outdo a traditional sort of fixed appliance approach. And it's typically, this is the kind of case which I look out for when I want to sort of, you know, when I'm missing aligners, when I've done a lot of fixed all day, I want to see a case like this walk in the door, because I know this is going to be a great case for aligners. But you know, as with any sort of case, we started off assessing things extraorally. We're looking for really the salient, the main features of the malocclusion, and I always start looking at the AP view to begin with. So in profile, you know, does the patient have a class 1, 2, or 3 skeletal pattern? And in this case, you know, despite some of the upper or mid face being blocked off, we can see there is an element of sort of paranasal hollowing. The lower lip is a little bit prominent relative to the upper, and the chin is probably slightly advanced the way we would like it to be as well. So there's some indication that the patient has sort of a mild class 3 skeletal pattern. And they also have a high angle or increased lower anterior facial height. And that's when you have a greater growth towards the front of the face rather than the back. And so we see sort of this increased stratopharomandibular plane angle, and that should sort of indicate to us that when we look inside the mouth, sometimes it is often, you know, associated with a reduced overbite. So we're getting ideas of what we're expecting to see intraorally just from sort of the extraoral assessment, although it doesn't always correlate, it often does sort of marry up. Transversely, you know, there's no real facial asymmetry to be concerned about. And from the anterior view, really what we want to look at is, number one, although the patient has a slightly long face, the lips are competent. And on the smile assessment, first thing I usually look at is the upper center line correct? And although I can't really zoom into this photograph, I think it looks pretty much coincident with the mid-facial axis. So I'm happy with the upper center line. The patient has pretty nice gingival display, so we can't quite see the gingival zeniths of the central incisor, which for a sort of an adult male is fairly optimal. The smile width is nice. We're not seeing very narrow, very wide buccal corridors, although we can see that it's not ideal. And finally, the smile arc is, although not totally constant, it isn't bad. We can see it's dropping down a little bit on the left-hand side, so there is certainly some scope to improve that. So that's really it for the extraoral assessment. Intraorally, immediately, the first thing I always do is do the oral hygiene check, and in doing sort of the general check, what's quite evident is the amount of gingival recession this patient is displaying. So similar to case 1 that we saw a few minutes ago, there is some periodontal gingival concern, although it's slightly different in its nature. The buccal segment teeth on the left and the right side are showing quite extensive recession. The root surfaces are exposed, and that's really going to be a feature on our problem list, and certainly a feature in the way we plan this case, which Mandeep will sort of go through in a little while. So that's the first thing, is look at the periodontal issues and the gingival problems. Looking at the teeth, some of them are quite heavily restored. The arches generally are not badly aligned, actually, and I would definitely put this in the mild crowding category. It's less than 4 millimeters of crowding, a bit of a rotation in the upper left 3, but otherwise things aren't really looking too bad. And this is, again, sort of fitting into that sort of low complexity of Invisalign case. And similarly in the lower, a little bit of crowding, rotation of the lower left 2. And again, it's just mild. But I'm a bit worried, just particularly in this view, if you look at the position of those lower incisors and how much bone and periodontal support we're going to have labially. That's going to be a concern of mine when I get to sort of planning this case. And when we put the teeth together and look at the occlusal relationships, immediately we see the patient's got a class 3 incisor relationship with a reduced over jet and a reduced over bite. And in this buccal shot, you can see that the canines are essentially class 1, but when we work our way back to the molars, they're a little bit more towards sort of a quarter or a half unit class 3, but the canines seem to be class 1. The other thing that's really quite notable in this view is the torque issue affecting the upper right 2. So it's quite sort of flared or kicked out in trying to sort of compensate and maintain a positive overjet, a positive relationship with the lower incisors. And when you look at the other side, you notice the upper left 2 is in fact in crossbite, and it has a reverse problem, so it's sort of relatively retroclined compared to the teeth around it. There's showing a bit of the fuzzy on my screen, but I think that upper left 3 is just slightly in crossbite as well. And then we can see a bit more detail around the gingival recession affecting all of those teeth. The other thing to sort of really note here is I think Farooq, you could see it better in the other buccal photograph from the right side, is you see how proclined the upper arch is in terms of the labial segment. You can see that the lower incisors are really quite upright or retroclined and indicating quite a lot of compensation for a relatively prognathic mandible or retrognathic maxilla. And that sort of position of the incisors is telling us already that there's a limitation as to how much more we can do for this patient without maybe taking teeth out, because already things are quite compensated. Not that it's impossible, but it might also be a little bit difficult. So to sort of summarize and create a problem list, what I would normally have on a problem list is starting off with any pathology. So the patient's got some gingival recession, and then moving on to a skeletal pattern, which is a mild class 3 skeletal pattern with increased vertical proportions. Tying that in intraorally with a class 3 incisor relationship with a reduced overjet and a reduced overbite, mild crowding in both arches, and a crossbite of the upper left 2. So from sort of those problem lists, I think Goss will go on and have a chat around the aims. But just, I think, Farooq, did you have a ClinCheck which was sort of showing the position of those teeth without any sort of correction, just sort of alignment?
I think Gos will have that when he shares his screen. So
Has got that. Perfect. So I just wanted to sort of show that ClinCheck. What we've done is align all the teeth without doing any IPR, without doing any extractions. And just the purpose of that was just to show what would happen if you try to align these teeth without creating space, and also to demonstrate the severity of the class 3 skeletal pattern. If we simply align all the teeth, you'll see that the patient more than likely ends up in a reverse overjet, and that really indicates to us the skeletal pattern that the patient is actually exhibiting. So I'll leave Gos to get on with that and show you, and I think you're going to go and do the dynamic part and do the ClinCheck as well, Gos.
Sorry, Hisham, I will show that at the end if that's okay. So I think Gos has got the one with IPR. I'll show that one at the end.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, but that was a bit of a curveball there, Hesham. Like, I thought, what? He wants me to get rid of all this IPR and show. Thankfully, right, Fruit's got that ready. That's awesome. But no, thank you. So my job really is to go through what we got back from our ClinCheck, how we assess it, and then how we are then gonna modify it to what we want the outcome to be for this patient. So obviously, assuming we've already checked that the initial malocclusion is correct, there's a few other things I tend to do just before I look at the simulation. So I'm going to run through, I'm going to look at the Bolton table as well. And you can see here that we have got a mandibular excess when comparing the lower 3-3 with the upper 3-3. So, I mean, I'm not going to go into Bolton too much. I think it was covered on Monday quite nicely, but it's a real useful sort of table and something I refer to quite often. So, and here, what that means to me is not only in the lower do I have to compensate for a skeletal 3, I've now got to compensate for extra tooth mass in the lower compared to the upper. So options are extra IPR in the lower or opening space around the laterals if you felt they needed it restoratively. And I think the sort of width of those two laterals is quite nice. And it's 0.3 of a millimeter excess in the lower. So maybe we'll add a bit of IPR. So I've done that. I always superimpose. I always watch the animation. And then you'll notice here right at the bottom, if you can see on your screens, there's an extra overcorrection aligner. So it's important we kind of just stick before there, because that's, if you go beyond that, you're going to see an unrealistic, because this just represents the overcorrection of the tightening of the aligner. So you want to really be here. That's the proposed outcome. So I'm going to look at it individually, because the one thing Hesham highlighted and we talked about in quite a lot of detail when we ran through this case was the recession, especially on the premolar. So you can already see we've got quite a lot of expansion in the upper. So this the upper left 5 is an implant, as is the lower right 6, but you can see how much change we've got around this 4. So if I zoom in, you can see the 4 is really expanding out. So, you know, if we look at the photos, let me get rid of everyone's faces. So if we look at the photos, you know, that's the upper left 4 right there. I mean, that's quite receded already, so we don't really want that. So that sticks out for me straight away. In the lower, that's our implant, lower right 6. You know, we have got a little bit expansion, but not a lot. So that's looking okay. Now, looking sort of face on, I can see there's some buccal movement of the lower centrals. For me, that's not really helpful in a class 3 case like this. I want to just see blue here, because I want more lingual movement of my lower labial segment. Let's look at the upper individually. Upper, yep. So we can see white rather than blue because we want the teeth to come slightly forwards. In the upper, we have got some IPR. In the lower, quite understandably, we've got quite a lot more IPR. Now let's look at the occlusion. Buccal occlusion obviously started off quite nicely, but really here what I'm interested in, so let's get rid of the superimposition, is what is my kind of virtual overbite and overjet like? Yeah, because one of the main issues people run into with aligner therapy is posterior open bites. Yeah, so any sort of class 3 case or a case where I have got a Bolton discrepancy like I just described, or you've got lower incisor crowding that you've got a lot more lower incisor crowding than you have upper incisor crowding, is you really want to be careful, because if you get heavy contacts at the end of treatment anteriorly, you're going to be left with buccal posterior open bite, sorry. And now people used to think, oh, that's because of the thickness of the plastic, that'll settle back in, but actually it's more to do with a heavy contact anteriorly. And I don't like that because I think that's a bit too sort of close. So what I tend to like is more of a virtual interincisal clearance. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're now going to modify this. So let's go into my other ClinCheck. So this hasn't been modified, it's exactly the same ClinCheck. Let's address a few things at a time. So let's first address there's too much expansion here, and it's mainly related in one area, isn't it? This upper right 3 and 4, because there's a few ways you can reduce expansion. One is you just click the arch, and then this comes up, and you can now start, constricting the arch, expanding it. You could do what you want, really. You could take this and go all the way out here. You can go all the way in. You can really do whatever you want. Yeah, it's virtual. It doesn't mean it's going to express itself, and it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. So let's undo that. However, if the issue is just one tooth, I really just want to make it a tooth-related thing. Yeah. So one last thing, we should have looked at the arch width table as well, because you can really now see how much kind of arch expansion we've got. So in the upper, and especially the 4 region, that's an extra 2 millimeters of expansion in the premolar region. So I think that's too much given how much recession he's got. So let's first move our premolar, and you can see how much is expanded by just comparing it to the stationary implant. So let's pull that back in a bit. Yeah, so let's get it to about there. Yeah, and there's I don't know if you can see it clearly on your screen because it's kind of like little numbers, but right at the bottom you've got your tooth movement table. You've also got the figures written under your movements. Now I've got 0.4 millimeters of buccal movement of this premolar, and I think that's acceptable. Most of that will be sort of tipping and shouldn't stress the gingivae out too much. So I'm going to increase it. Let's get 0.5. Sorry, 0.5 other way. So that's that bit. Now let's address the interincisal clearance. So what I want is I want more of an overjet virtually in my ClinCheck. So I am going to play with my IPR. So let's play with the lower IPR first. Let's start increasing and reducing. So firstly, if I can get away with it, I'm going to remove IPR between my 6 and 5. Yeah, it's just difficult to do. So let's see, can we do without it? One way of doing that is to increase the IPR around the other contact, which is a lot easier to access. Yeah, so I can see this 3 and 4 contacts quite nice. So we'll add a bit there. We've already got loads there, got some here. Let's grab some here. Now, for me, I prefer to sort out the overjet, the overbite well above center lines. Yeah, so I don't worry about center lines. I always consent that, you know, your center lines might not match at the end of treatment, because I just think there's other things to prioritize rather than just center lines. Obviously, the upper center line you want to sort of get close to bang on, if not fully bang on. But the lower center line, I'm not too concerned if it kind of shifts around. Yeah. So again, should we try to get rid of this? And then we're just going to add a little bit extra to these to compensate for it. So now, if I look at it sort of square on, I can see a bit more blue, maybe not all the way, but you know, I think these teeth there should be a bit more buccal movement. So now let's have a look, get rid of my superimposition, see if I've got more of a, got a little bit more of an overjet now. So that's pretty good. And I'm now thinking, actually, I can't go without IPR here. So I'm going to add IPR between these contacts, but I'm going to keep it quite slight. Let's just keep it at 0.3. And then we'll keep that one off. So let's have a look now. So again, actually, I fluked the center lines. Awesome. Got more of an overjet, so that's pretty good. Now, another way to get more of an overjet is to either reduce the IPR in the upper. Yeah, so you could go, well, actually, I'm not going to do that IPR. So I'm going to get rid of that. And let's see what happens. So let's look at the upper. Let's see what is the result of not doing IPR there. Well, that tooth was in crossbite anyway, so we moved it buccally. I have got IPR around my 3. I've also got a battery that's running low. So I might have to run and plug this in a minute, but very good. Good, okay, so let's have a look now. Bite them together. So look, we've got center lines correct. We've got a decent overjet. We have got a real juicy amount of IPR in the lower. Less IPR than we initially planned in the upper. I'm just going to swap my IPR here. I might just stick it distal to this. The reason being, I'm not very keen on doing IPR distal to my lateral, especially when we've already done a Bolton analysis. So we already know that these teeth are, and it's normally your laterals when you've got a Bolton discrepancy and you've got less tooth mass in your upper 3 to 3. So, you know, doing IPR around the 2 when you've already got Bolton discrepancy is like not the best idea. So I'm actually going to stick it distal to my 3 instead. And now you can see the shape of this lateral. It's going to need restorative sort of treatment. So that's the beauty of a ClinCheck as well, is you can kind of see that, yeah, look, I'm going to get black triangles here. They were going to need some post-orthodontic restorative treatment. So just in terms of adding IPR and changing the positions of our sort of teeth, this is, I think, more predictable. It's a lot more work in terms of our IPR. I know, like we talked about doing as much as you can in one go to reduce your AGPs, but actually I'm more of a fan of spreading these out, and I'm doing them hand files and non-AGP anyway. So I would actually only ever, so I stage this, so I try to work out how often I'm going to see the patient. So, you know, if I'm going to see them every sort of aligners, I would spread them out and do like 3 contacts every 6 aligners, yeah? So my battery's about to go now. So let me go plug this in quickly. I'll take you with me.
Mandeep, I love it. It's dynamic ClinCheck, dynamic visual display of your house, your IT. We're getting the whole thing.
Mate, I'm at the practice, so you're lucky a Deliveroo hasn't turned up yet.
Or complaint patient.
Yeah, that would have been a tubules first, I think, yeah?
Managed complaint during the liner talk.
Yeah.
With a burger.
So, I mean, this is where I'm at now. I could now talk about the attachments and think, you know, what is my reliability with the attachments and what not? I tend to have, the way I work is I would first get the teeth where I want them, get that ClinCheck back, and then I play around with the attachments. And then once I'm happy with the attachments and the position of the teeth, and I think everything's predictable, healthy, I would then look at staging, yeah? And it's always important. You then go to your staging tab. Now, if I went to it here, you know, the staging would be all wrong. However, you want to sort of look, so if I went to staging here, sorry. So you can see the staging here is all the attachments come on at 3 as planned, but there's quite a lot of IPR to do as well. So on, you know, that third aligner appointment, you know, the patient's worn their aligners without any attachments for, you know, 4 weeks. They come in and you're like, wait, let's get these attachments on. And now let's do like the mother of all IPR appointments. Yeah. And it's because people don't pay attention to that enough. So I would probably say I might even delay IPR until aligner 8 and do just 3 contacts, and then do 3 contacts 6 aligners later. And I would write back to the technician and say, I only want to do 3 contacts at a time. I only want to do them every 6 aligners. I only want to start them at aligner 8. Don't worry about increasing the number of aligners. Yeah, because that's people get hung up on, oh, I've got to try to get them in this many aligners. Oh no, the aligners are going to increase. Like, forget about it. Do things safely, stage it properly. Don't worry about the number of aligners. Let's get our money's worth out of a line, yeah? So that's that bit. Hesham, anything to add?
Yeah, you know? I think absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there, you know, Gus, when you said, let's get our money's worth out of a line. But in seriousness, I think that's exactly how, you know, I would be planning this case as well. As part of the consent process, you know, you mentioned discussing with the patient the very strong possibility that they're going to be left with some black triangles between the teeth, and they're going to need some sort of post-orthodontic intervention to try and address those. And of course, you have to have a discussion regarding the periodontal concerns before as well, because there is some amount of expansion that's going to happen here, whether that's sort of proclamation of the anterior areas or expansion of the, you know, transversely in the buccal segments. So that's always going to be a consideration. I think the reason why I think this case is so suited to aligners as well is that typically, you know, if you're someone who does, if you're an orthodontist and you do some fixed appliances, or indeed if you're a GDP who's doing fixed appliances or 6-month smiles, you know, there's a risk sort of with the fixed appliances that you might just lose control of that lower labial segment. You might end up doing a lot of round tripping, or indeed you might even go into a reverse or edge-to-edge bite quite early on. And actually, the nice thing about the aligner is that if you do staging the way Goss has described, you can really control that AP position of the lower labial segment, and you can always make sure that actually you're maintaining a positive over jet, positive over bite. And for me, you know, that is sort of one of the key things around aligner treatment is being able to manage, you know, a favorable AP incisor relationship in these sort of class 3 cases. And I think for that, there's nothing better than using an aligner. And indeed, if I was sort of to say, if I was trying to sort of do this case as best as possible, but trying to reduce cost for the patient, I might do a fixed appliance at the top, but combine it with an aligner at the bottom in order to just get that control that I'm looking for in the lower labial segment. But the way it's planned, I think, is absolutely beautiful. And that's exactly what I would do as well.
Brilliant. Well, I stole most of your ideas, Hesham, when we had our little ClinCheck video meeting.
You're too modest, Gus. You're way too modest.
Goz, can I ask you to stop sharing the screen, and I'm just going to do the final learning points, and then we'll take some questions after that. Perfect. Great, guys. So I wanted to introduce just 2 slides next to go through the main learning points from these 2 cases. And it's what I've learned from listening to the experts go through these cases. So to start off with Angela and Martina's case, the key components were to assess the biotype when planning expansion and proclination. The biology is going to be our biggest limitation. When we're proclining teeth, to choose a dental reference, and for expansion to also choose a dental reference, or to demonstrate or describe the expansion in millimeters. Then we went to Mandeep and Hisham's case, the reduced bite class 3 case. And here we had a couple of things to check expansion through superimposition, whether it's overall change or an individual tooth, prioritize the overjet and the overbite over the dental center line, lower dental center line. And class 3 case is really about managing through IPR with lower arch, increased IPR, and reducing the IPR in the upper arch. And of course, the final point is to get your value of money from Align Technology. Guys, I'm going to stop there, and we're just going to go to the questions next. I don't know if Angela and Martina, if you want to make any comments in the case, ask any questions to the guys.
Yeah, I just had a quick question actually. So when I would do a class 3 case like that, I would always apply class 3 elastics just to what you were talking about, like minimizing the risk of those hard anterior contacts, because we know that it can produce that posterior open bite. Was that something that you would normally do in that kind of case?
You would. The issue here is you've got a unilateral implant. So you've got this upper left 5 that's very stationary, so you know that makes it risky. You're going to get force greater on the lower on one side and greater on, and then even on the lower and the upper on the other side, so it could introduce, you know, a few. But you're quite right, always back it up with some class 3 elastics, have the cutouts there even if you don't use them. I think that's button cutouts, that's less plastic though, so I don't know if you're getting your money's worth out of a line.
It costs for the buttons, remember?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, maybe there's more work for them because they've got to cut out buttons. Yeah,
it's
that button
cut. Less plastic, it's greener, better for the ocean.
Yeah.
I can see Goz's next case having cutouts on every single tooth.
Fantastic. I would, what I would say on my class 3 cases, I don't know whether you guys do it, but if it's verging on more than sort of about 0.3 millimeters of IPR in the lower arch between the 5 to 5, I will always do a ClinCheck with a lower incisor extraction.
Yes.
Just to be sure that I've really given the patient all the options and consented them, and you'll be really surprised. It's always the women that don't want the extraction and go for IPR, and the men will always say, oh, well, it makes sense, just take the tooth out. It's really funny, you know, I've had quite a spate of these in the last few months, but I think definitely do as many ClinChecks as you need to be sure yourself and be satisfied, and to be able to show the patient as well, so they can make a good informed decision.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Angela. I do the exact same thing. Get a ClinCheck with the IPR and one with lower incisor extraction. And sometimes I find it's sort of, for me, it's a clear decision, and I won't even present both options because I don't think I need to. Because for me, I know that I would be not, happy to deliver one option and happy to deliver the other. And in some cases, as you say, Angela, it's up to the patient to decide which way they want to go.
Yeah, I think if you talk them through the pros and cons of each, that it becomes very clear to them what the best choice is, and you can steer them towards the right decision. But like you say, at least you've given them the options, and you've got that informed consent.
Great ClinCheck manipulating, Goz.
You two, Goz and Martina, you guys should be visual demonstrators. That was just, I can't do that.
First time ever, I think, live. So
amazing.
Brilliant, guys.
Yeah.
Incredible. I had a question for Goz actually. Goz, how do you get your money? No, Goz, when you are staging IPR, are you going to result in round tripping taking place because you've delayed creating the space when you perhaps could have used it earlier on?
That's very true, Farouk. If you thought that was a real risk, what you would then do is, I don't know if you saw the staging on this one, but the lower finished before the upper, I would put my passive aligners at the beginning of treatment. And then that way, there's no active treatment, there's no active movement at the beginning. And then you can start your IPR, stage it, and by the time you've got active movement, you've already got the space. Yeah, so again, you could even say, I want, 6 passive aligners at the beginning. Like, you've got to get your money's worth, Farouk. You've got to get as many passive aligners as you can. Just, yeah.
Absolutely. I've got a model here from just keeping it to get my monies. That's great. That's really interesting. And of course, there's other ideas where round tripping is considered to be okay, and actually will help get you alignment earlier on, and then you correct the occlusion later on. It's really interesting to get your thoughts on it. And we've got some really interesting questions, guys. I'm going to put them forwards. The first one is, how do you get started with aligner therapy? What's the pathway to provide clear aligners? Any introductory courses you recommend?
This is
I think I'll answer this one. Yeah, we had this last night on Clubhouse, didn't we? So basically, firstly, you really need to consider how much orthodontic experience you've got. So if you've got no orthodontic experience, obviously you're going to be going very carefully into it. You would only be able to get on a Go course, but in my opinion, the more experience you can have in terms of general orthodontics and doing fixed appliance therapy before you even go near clear aligners. Personally, I just think that's better because you're going to learn much more about the biomechanics, about treatment planning and about assessment before you go into clear aligners, and then you'll be able to transport across that knowledge and apply it and see how that applies to your clear aligners. There is some amazing courses out there now for clear aligners. There's the Diploma in Clear Aligner Therapy, which is run in conjunction with the City of London Dental School, which I actually completed, and that was amazing. So that's a 2-year course. And there's now actually an MSc just been released in clear aligner therapy, which I'm gonna hopefully start next year. So I'm really looking forward to that. But what I would say is just really try and get as much experience as you can really before you go into clear aligners, so you've got that kind of background knowledge and you know you're going to be safe.
I like to say that Goz's course, the ortho course, the diploma there, can give you that generic foundation on how teeth move, and combining that with fixed appliances and some aligners, I believe, in there as well. Goz, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. There's a lot of aligner stuff.
And of course, how to get value for money from that entire process. I'm going to go on to the next question, guys. This is one in relation to retainers. So would you always give fixed retainers? Also, would there be an open bite in case you end the case with anterior touching? I think that's anterior elastics potentially. So how would we manage that?
Shall I answer the fixed retainers? Hesham, you answer it.
Okay. Yes, boss.
Sorry, otherwise I'm going to keep talking.
I think the question about fixed retainers is, I think most of you would probably agree by speaking to your colleagues, as probably one of the most frequent questions we get asked is whether we need to use a fixed retainer or not. And the key to it really is proper assessment and establishing the etiology of the malocclusion early on. So there are specific indications for using fixed retainers, and they are things which are lead to high risk of relapse, things like spacing, rotations, moving teeth a long way, if you've got severe torque issues or cross bites. So there's specific indications for fixed retainers, and I would use them in those circumstances. I'm not really an advocate, and some of you might sort of having a different position, but I'm not really an advocate of giving everybody a fixed retainer as a baseline retention regime, only because number one, it's more work for me. Number two, they can fail. Number three, patients tend to rely on the fixed retainer and then not with their nighttime retainer. And number four, it's another thing for the patient to pay for, to maintain, to look after. So I don't think it's something which you should be doing, or which I at least do routinely, unless there's a very, very specific indication. And the patient insisting on one is not such an indication for me. And that's sort of consented at the beginning of treatment. And if I am planning on having a fixed retainer, I'll include that within my fee structure at the beginning, not at the end, because as you all know, the retention for your case is planned on day one, not on the last day of treatment.
I'm exactly the same as you, Hashem. I do exactly the same.
I think there's so much to understand about the stability of teeth and retention. It's not something you learn on a one-day course. It's something, when we're training to become an orthodontist, we spend months and months and months reading papers, looking at the studies, trying to understand it. We still don't understand it. So I think the most important thing is to make sure that, like Hisham said, that from the very outset, the patient understands there's a maintenance, there's going to be maintenance in the form of retention, whichever form you decide it's going to be.
I think just to sort of add on to that as well is there are some sort of modifying factors which I didn't mention. So if you're treating cases with periodontal disease, for example, there's a separate indication for splinting those teeth together with a fixed retainer at the end. So there are some sort of specific indications. Or if you've created space for the replacement of missing teeth by bringing central incisors together or some other teeth together, you may wish to sort of protect those spaces for your restorative colleagues by using bond retainers in that kind of a case. So there are specific indications, particularly for the adult cases, which we haven't discussed, but generically, the ones we mentioned are the ones where you should be using a fixed retainer.
Cool, guys. Going to the next question. It's about upper lateral incisors and aligners. What happens if the upper incisors, if I'm interpreting this question correctly, are still rotated mid-treatment and we want to get extra aligners? Can rotation be corrected without additional IPR?
Go on, Goss.
It's all about attachment design. Yeah, so the laterals are quite small. They sit next to massive teeth. You got your canine, you got your central, then you got your little lateral. Yeah, there's not enough sort of surface area to grip that lateral and twist it. So it needs an attachment. It needs the biggest attachment, your money's worth of attachment on that lateral, especially if it's rotated. There you go.
You guys all need to go back and watch Monday's lecture that Ramtin and Damon gave. And they talked very nicely about the attachment, not just having a big attachment, but sort of what angulation it should be at. And it was really interesting. Did you guys see it? So if you're trying to bring something down and round, you angle it a certain way. And so, definitely watch that because there was some really great information about that. But yeah, it's just a small tooth, flat, both flat on the front, flat platally, hardly anything to grip onto. So the attachment's the most important thing.
Yeah, so you want a sash attachment, and that's by Jonathan Nicosesis. So you're going to need to find that on the internet. What
does that look like, Goz?
It's a sash, as in you're wearing a sash as a beauty pageant.
So yeah, that's exactly what it is.
And if you've got some extrusion as well, you would then bevel it. So you've got some extrusion as well. There you go. So sash attachment, Jonathan Nicosesis.
This is priceless information, everyone.
Gold dust.
Yeah, definitely.
That is gold dust. That is actual gold dust. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because in my very first Invisalign case, that is the exact problem I had. Well, I had two problems in retrospect. One was not doing enough IPR at the right stage, which is probably a common problem. And I think the reason for that is we tend to underestimate how much IPR we've actually done. So I tend to now use IPR gauges to sort of measure that in a reliable way. And the second thing was the attachment was just tiny and not designed the right way. And so we lost tracking, as Invisalign used to use their sort of terminology, lost tracking. The incisors sort of stayed up where it was and didn't really correct. So I did what most good specialist orthodontists do, is I put on some fixed appliances and sorted it out within 2 visits. But now, you know, now that I know, I can sprinkle some of that gold dust on it, and hopefully I won't have that problem again.
In terms of the IPR, because the question asked, do you need IPR, right? The way that aligner therapy works is there has to be some round tripping. You need to open the spaces to allow these teeth to move, right, guys? So, you know, you've got to look at the staging. Is there enough space opened to allow that tooth to come down, and then can that space close? So you don't always need IPR. You can sometimes just expand a little.
Yeah, so if you've got a really rotated tooth that you know is going to be really tricky, you could actually ask the technician to program in a little bit of space around that tooth before you derotate it, and that's going to allow more plastic to grab onto that tooth to help derotate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also it's a massive weakness of Invisalign Go. Yeah, it's the same endpoint but over less aligners, so they then go for that space opening. So there is a limitation to Invisalign Go, and so for certain rotations, you've almost got to then think, it's not, you know, it might not do the trick. Whereas a comprehensive Invisalign, just like both of you described, making the spaces and then allowing the tooth to rotate, will take more aligners than, you know, you would get on Invisalign Go.
I think that's really interesting, Goss, because I would love to see the numbers from Align on Invisalign Go and how many of their Invisalign Go cases require refinement. Because I was speaking to a colleague of mine who has done some cases. She's GDP, but she was saying to me that she's doing refinements in 80% of her cases, you know, or even perhaps approaching 90%, because she's just not finding that she's getting to the endpoint as described by the ClinCheck. So that means that actually, if you are using Invisalign Go and you're trying to get to that point quicker by using less aligners, Goss, as you're saying, you end up just spending more time with the refinement stage. So it's actually it's not really as beneficial as you might think.
Yeah, agree.
Well, guys, going to the next question. This is specific for Goz, and it relates to the upper left 4. And the question is, when adjusting the upper left 4, this was a tooth that was expanded, if you recall, and you took out the expansion. And she's written down here, without adjusting the antagonistic tooth, which I think is the opposing tooth, isn't there a risk of premature contact taking place?
Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen again, really quickly.
That was a good question.
Very good question.
Teeth are not independent creatures.
Yeah, so go with here, go to the super. So I've moved this upper 4. I'm going to go to occlusion. I'm going to go resolve heavy contacts. Done.
Done.
Yeah,
just
done.
like that. Magic.
Simple as that, guys.
I think that's almost mic drop time, yeah? So 4 and 4, fine. Yeah, so there you go. So what you do is, you know, the question was a very good question. You know, and if I undid that that last movement and showed you the occlusal contacts, you're right, it would have been heavy, and that's one step I forgot. And I think, Hesham, you were texting me going, occlusion, but I only just saw that because I was too busy trying to plug in my laptop.
Well done.
Cool. And guys, I'm just going to go on to the final question. Is it possible to show? It's an interesting one. I'm not sure the answer myself. Is it possible to show the results of Invisalign Go versus Invisalign Full from one scan? And it says here, yeah. Is it possible to show both to demarcate a difference between the two products?
I don't think so, because you're going to be on a different IDS, aren't you?
It's very similar to comparing Invisalign Lite Invisalign Comprehensive?
It is, but you're not able to move the 6s. You can't do certain. You can only relieve 6 millimeters of crowding. You can't do certain severe rotations and things like that. So it is different. And so I think the answer's, unless you've submitted it as a full and as a go, then no. And you're not obviously going to submit it, are you, twice?
No.
No.
Interesting one there. Guys, that brings us to the end of the questions. I'd like to thank Drew for allowing us to come back onto his platform. And of course, I'd like to thank the wonderful educational and charming panelists and visual experts, as I've discovered this evening. And to the guys who are listening to this, we're going to be doing this again. It will become a regular feature. And the next session is going to be on Monday, the 7th of June. So please put that date into your diary, and the A-team will be back. Thank you so much.
Cheers, guys. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much once again, Farouk, for hosting this, for Hisham, Goss, Martina, and Angela. This is phenomenal. I learned so much. I think ortho is the one discipline I keep getting confused, but at least the clarity you guys are bringing on board is brilliant and really positive. June, and then we will move on September, and we're going to keep doing this. The A-team has to become world famous. So if you're listening to this, go and tell everyone to listen to the A-team again in June, and we will keep coming back. I love this approach we've got. If you've not seen the A-team video, you people need to share that. The van has been ordered. The van is coming as well. So this is great. This has been Tubules Live, beaming again from our homes, and I hope you've all enjoyed it. Next week is Prosthodontic Week. Kostas Karagiannopoulos, I said that right. He's here all week, a consultant prosthodontist and specialist from Guy's Hospital. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. He's doing every single day. It's going to be phenomenal. A-team, we look forward to seeing you again in 3 months' time. And keep the cases coming. We will create a video which everybody can have, so you know how to get the cases on. It's a good evening from me, from the Tubules Live Center, and thank you very much from Hisham, Dr. Farouk Ahmed, Goss, Martina, and Angela. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks. I ain't getting no plane.